It was July 14, 2007, inside Gros Prison, a facility designed to keep dangerous criminals locked away. Thick barriers, controlled movement, constant surveillance. Everything was built to prevent escape. Except one thing: an attack from above. At the center of this unbelievable story was Pascal Payet. Not just an inmate, a planner, a risk-taker, and someone who understood one simple truth. If you can't break the system, you outthink it. Gros Prison wasn't considered weak. It was structured, organized, predictable, and that last part, predictable, was its biggest flaw, because every system that runs on routine can be studied, and every routine can be broken. Most inmates think about one thing: getting out, but they think in straight lines, doors, walls, locks. Payet thought differently. He looked up, literally, at the sky, and that's where the idea started. A helicopter escape. Think about that for a second. Not sneaking out, not hiding, but bringing an aircraft into a prison, landing, picking him up, and leaving. It sounded impossible, which is exactly why it worked. This wasn't something you decide overnight. It took coordination, timing, precision. People outside the prison had to be involved. A pilot, a helicopter, a plan that had no room for hesitation. Because once it started, there would be no turning back. Security at Gros Prison was strong on the ground. Guards watched doors, monitored movement, controlled access. But the sky, it wasn't treated as a threat. No one expected a helicopter to land inside a prison yard. And that assumption became the opening. It was a normal day. Routine, quiet, controlled. Nothing unusual. Until a sound broke through the air. Low at first, distant, then louder, stronger. The unmistakable sound of helicopter blades. Guards looked up, confused, uncertain, because this wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't scheduled. And by the time they understood what was happening, it was already too late. The helicopter dropped lower, closer, closer, until it was inside the prison grounds. Dust flew, noise filled the air. Everything happened fast. Too fast. Payet moved. No hesitation. No delay. He ran toward the helicopter. Guards reacted. But reaction isn't the same as preparation. And they weren't prepared. Within seconds, he was inside. The door shut. And just like that, the helicopter lifted. Right here, this is where everything explodes. Because this isn't just an escape anymore. This is something else. Something bold. Something cinematic. Something that feels impossible. But happened. If you're already hooked, if you can feel the intensity of what just unfolded, stay with this story. Because what comes next only gets more unbelievable. The helicopter rose above the prison. Higher. Farther. And then it was gone, leaving behind confusion, shock, disbelief. Silence followed. Then chaos. Alarms sounded. Guards rushed. Orders were shouted. But it didn't matter. Because the escape was already complete. News spread quickly. A helicopter escape? From a high-security prison? People couldn't believe it. Authorities were embarrassed. Because this wasn't just a failure. It was a statement. The system had been outplayed. And just like that, Pascal Payet became something more than a prisoner. He became a story. A name people talked about. A man who escaped not through weakness, but through imagination. But here's where it gets even more intense. Because this wasn't the only time. Not the only escape. not the only helicopter. In the next chapter, you'll see how one escape turned into a pattern, and how Payet didn't just break out once. He did it again and again, because for him, escape wasn't an accident. It was a strategy. The first time, it felt impossible. A helicopter lands inside a prison, and a man disappears into the sky. But what if that wasn't the most shocking part? What if the real story was that it didn't stop there? Because for Pascal Payet, escaping once wasn't enough. He had done the impossible at Gros Prison in 2007. Now, something even more dangerous was happening. He was learning. Most escapees run, hide, disappear. They stay quiet, avoid attention. But Payet, he thought differently. His escape wasn't just about freedom. It was proof. Proof that the system had a weakness. And once you find a weakness, you can use it again. Payet didn't see prisons the way others did. He didn't see walls, didn't see barriers. He saw patterns, predictable systems, security routines that could be studied. And once you understand a system like that, you don't just escape it, you outplay it. A helicopter. It sounded crazy the first time. Now, it sounded possible, because he had already proven it could work. And when something works once, it becomes a strategy. But repeating an escape like that? That's a different level of risk. Because now, authorities were aware. They had seen what happened. They knew what to watch for. Or at least, they thought they did. After the first escape, security tightened. Procedures changed. Surveillance increased. But here's the problem with reacting. You fix what you saw, not what you missed. And Payet was counting on that. An escape like this doesn't happen alone. It requires coordination, timing, people willing to take risks, a pilot, support on the outside, a plan that leaves no room for hesitation. Because once that helicopter appears, everything has to move fast. Payet didn't rush. He waited, studied, watched how the system had changed. And more importantly, what hadn't. Because no matter how much security improves, there are always gaps. You just have to find them. Right here, this is where the story evolves. Because now it's not just about one escape. It's about repetition, confidence, escalation. If you're feeling the tension building, the sense that something bigger is coming, stay with it. Because what happens next pushes this story even further. Then, it happened again. Another helicopter. Another moment where the sky became an exit. Authorities reacted faster this time. But reaction is not the same as prevention. And once again, Payet slipped through. This wasn't just embarrassing anymore. It was alarming. Because one escape can be explained. But two, that's a pattern. That's a problem. By now, Pascal Payet wasn't just a fugitive. He was becoming something else. A symbol. A man who didn't just escape, but challenged the system repeatedly. And every successful move made him harder to catch. The pressure was intense. Questions were everywhere. How does this keep happening? Why can't it be stopped? Because now, it wasn't just about one man. It was about credibility. Each escape didn't just give Payet freedom. It took something from the system. Confidence, control, authority. And rebuilding that isn't easy. But here's where everything starts to turn. Because repeating success creates risk. Confidence becomes exposure. Patterns become predictable. And in the next chapter, you'll see how the system begins to fight back. Stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. Because now, it's not just about stopping an escape. It's about ending a pattern. And patterns don't break easily. By now, it wasn't just an escape story anymore. It was a pattern. Pascal Payet had done what no one expected, more than once. A helicopter dropping into Gros prison. A fast extraction. A clean getaway. And then, it happened again. That's when everything changed. The first escape shocked authorities. The second one alarmed them. But by the third time this method was even considered possible, it became something else entirely. A crisis. Because this wasn't just about one man anymore. It was about control. If someone could repeatedly enter a prison from the sky, what did that say about the system? Authorities moved quickly. Security reviews. New protocols. Stricter monitoring. This time, they weren't just reacting to what happened. They were preparing for what might happen next. Because now, they knew exactly what they were dealing with. The biggest change? Attention shifted upward. The sky, the very thing that made the escape possible, was no longer invisible. Airspace monitoring increased. Response times improved. The blind spot was gone. Or at least, that's what they believed. For Payet, things were changing too. Escaping once is bold. Twice is extraordinary. But continuing? That's dangerous. Because now, everyone is watching. Not just the ground. Everything. Payet's name carried weight now. Not just inside prisons, but across law enforcement. And that kind of attention. It's a double-edged sword. It makes you powerful, but it also makes you visible. Right here, this is where the story tightens again. Because what started as brilliance is now turning into pressure. The system is adapting. The risks are growing. And the question becomes, how long can this continue? If you're feeling that shift, that sense that something is about to give, stay with it. Because this is where everything begins to change. Once authorities recognized the pattern, they focused on it. Every report, every lead, every possible connection. Because when you can predict a method, you can start to stop it. And that's exactly what they were trying to do. Information began to flow more efficiently. Coordination improved. The gap between Payet and the system started to shrink. Slowly, but surely. And then, something shifted. Not a major mistake. Not a dramatic failure. Just a small crack. A moment where the plan didn't go perfectly. A delay. A complication. Something that gave authorities a glimpse. A chance to understand more. And that's all they needed. Now, it wasn't just about reacting. It was about anticipating, tracking movements, watching patterns, closing gaps. Because the system had learned something important. You don't beat a strategy by chasing it. You beat it by understanding it. For the first time, it felt like the advantage was shifting. Payet wasn't completely in control anymore. The system was catching up. And when that happens, everything changes. Because in the next chapter, the tension reaches its peak. The moment where strategy meets resistance. Where confidence meets consequence. And where the question finally gets answered. Can someone who escaped the impossible stay ahead forever? Or does every pattern eventually break? At the beginning, the sky was freedom. It was the one place no one expected danger. The one direction no one guarded. That's how Pascal Payet escaped Gros prison. Not through walls. Not through tunnels. But through air. But now, everything had changed. Authorities had learned their lesson. The sky was no longer ignored. Airspace surveillance increased. Response teams were trained. Protocols were rewritten. Helicopters weren't just unexpected anymore. They were anticipated. This wasn't the same situation as before. Back then, Payet had surprise. He had timing. He had a system that didn't see him coming. Now, he had attention. And attention changes everything. Because once people are watching, the smallest move becomes visible. For Payet, the pressure wasn't just outside. It was internal. Every decision carried more risk. Every plan required more precision. Because the margin for error was gone. Authorities didn't just react. They adapted. They studied the previous escapes, broke them down, analyzed every detail. Not just what happened, but how it happened. Because understanding the method is the first step to stopping it. Right here, this is where everything reaches a breaking point. Because the balance has shifted. The hunter is learning. The escape is becoming harder. If you can feel that tension, that sense that something is about to give, stay with it. Because what happens next is the moment everything turns. Payet wasn't the kind of person to stop. Not after proving it could be done. Not after building a method that worked. But repeating success under pressure? That's where things fall apart. Because now, every move is expected. And when something is expected, it can be countered. This time, the system responded faster. The moment something unusual appeared in the sky, attention shifted immediately. No confusion, no delay, just action. And that made all the difference. For the first time, the escape didn't unfold perfectly. Timing slipped. Control weakened. And suddenly, the plan wasn't in charge anymore. The system was. This was the moment everything changed. Not just for Payet, but for the story itself. Because for the first time, the escape wasn't ahead of the response. It was facing it. Authorities moved quickly, coordinated, focused, because they had been waiting for this, preparing for this. And now, it was happening. Because in the final chapter, everything comes to an end. The strategy, the pattern, the legend. But not without one last twist. Because even when a story seems finished, it can still surprise you. And in this case, the ending is just as unbelievable as the beginning. At the beginning, it felt like a movie. A helicopter drops from the sky, lands inside a prison, and a man disappears into the air. Not once, not twice, but enough times to make the world stop and ask, how is this even possible? At the center of it all was Pascal Payet. A man who didn't just escape. He redefined what escape looked like. Every system has weaknesses. And Payet found one. The sky. He turned it into a doorway. A path no one expected. But here's the truth about every strategy. The more you use it, the more visible it becomes. And once something becomes visible, it becomes stoppable. By the time authorities had fully adapted, everything was different. The element of surprise was gone. Airspace was monitored. Response teams were ready. What once felt impossible was now anticipated. For the first time, the plan didn't hold. Not completely. Something delayed. Something misaligned. And in a strategy built on precision, even the smallest disruption matters. Because when timing breaks, everything breaks. It didn't end with chaos. It didn't end with a dramatic final escape. It ended with something quieter. Control. Authorities moved in, prepared, focused, and this time, there was no gap, no blind spot. No sky to escape into. Pascal Payet was taken back into custody. The helicopters, the prison yard, the sound of blades cutting through the air. Those moments didn't disappear. They became history. A story told again and again. because it feels unreal. But it happened. Even after capture, in the end, every escape has a limit. Every pattern reaches a breaking point. And every advantage eventually disappears. For Pascal Payet, the sky was freedom. Until it wasn't. Because no matter how far you go, no matter how high you fly, there's always a moment when the ground catches up. And when it does, the story changes, not into one of escape, but into one of consequence. And that's how a man who escaped through the sky became part of history, not just for what he did, but for how he did it. Like, share and subscribe. Thank you.